Coming up on Need to Know, her voice is a familiar one for public radio listeners, but her request may be an uncomfortable one for many. Distill your questions, experiences, hardships, and dreams about race and identity in 6 words. Award-winning journalist Michele Norris on coming face to face with race in America. That's just ahead. Also on the show, Michele Norris's Race Card Project recently visited Nazareth College. We'll hear how the school is taking an active approach to race relations among students and faculty. It's all coming up right now on Need to Know. Race in 6 words. Check one below, black or white. Latina raised white, unaccepted by all. Affirmative action does not benefit me. Those are just a few of the tens of thousands of 6-word submissions to the Race Card Project. Award-winning journalist and former host of NPR's All Things Considered, Michele Norris founded the project 5 years ago. This past December, she announced her plans to leave National Public Radio to devote more time to expanding this raw look at America's views on race. Norris recently brought the Race Card Project to Nazareth College. During her visit, she stopped by the WXXI studios and shared more about our nation's complex and interesting relationship with race. Take a look. So, Michele, it all started really 5 years ago, and it started with these little black postcards, essentially intended to start a conversation. And what's interesting is we can fast forward to this past December, and after 13 years with NPR, you announced your desire to devote more time and to expand the Race Card Project. So I want to know, how has this effort to generate more dialogue about race and cultural identity in America surprised you as the founder of this project?
I'm surprised every day. From the very beginning, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that people took up the invitation to share their story in 6 words. I'm surprised that people still use postcards. I mean, when I created this, there were some people who said, no one is going to send this in to you. And we didn't go online for some time. At the beginning, it was all postcards. So I was surprised by that. I'm surprised by the candor that people serve up in 6 words. And now, as you know, they often send in backstories to explain their 6 words. And I'm also surprised at how difficult it has been to take this conversation and grow it some ways in traditional media, because it's a very, non-traditional approach to storytelling. So, that has been a surprise also. What hasn't surprised me is some of the things that we're seeing in the news right now. The combustible moment that we find ourselves in, I am less surprised by that because I've been seeing manifestations of this in the inbox over the last 5 years. In some ways, it has been an archive and a barometer that has helped me understand the fissures and the fractures around race, and also around class and around American identity. And so some of the things that we're seeing in the news right now, where people are talking about taking their country back, it is, I understand a little bit about why people feel a certain amount of vertigo in an America that they don't feel is theirs anymore, or that they are having sort of a status anxiety, for all kinds of reasons. So it's been surprising, but in some ways I'm less surprised by some things as well.
I have a few that I would like to read, some of the recent submissions about race. Divide and conquer the media's agenda. We all have the same skeleton. Black, female, poor, invisible, feared alone. Once we are friends, race disappears. Race is fake, I am not. How did you decide on 6 words? Because that seems so difficult considering the depth of what we're pondering to bring that down to 6. Mm-hmm. Why that number?
Well, there are a few reasons. One, as a writer, I had been encouraged very early in my career to use that kind of winnowing exercise to tackle difficult topics. So when I was in college, I had a professor who said, if you can take a topic and you can reduce it to one sentence, then you are in control instead of it being in control of you. There were lots of 6-word exercises out there that that they were using in sports, and 6 Words Minneapolis, which happens to be my hometown, that people had used that device to approach subjects in sort of a pithy way. So I understood that would work, and I knew it was a big topic, and I knew if I asked people for a paragraph, they would write an essay. If I asked people for a sentence, that they would write a paragraph, right. And that it would be parenthetical, that people would have hyphens and semicolons. And so I thought, put a fine point on it. It would really force people to condense something, a reduction that would get really to the heart of it. And that's why I chose 6 words. And I knew it wasn't artifice, and I was a little bit concerned because, and I have faced a certain amount of criticism from people every step of the way who said, she's playing games with a difficult topic or a combustible topic. Mm-hmm. This is too serious for you to use word trickery. And I understand that. But at the same time, it really does allow you to get to the heart of things. I mean, you just read a number of them. They're, lady, I don't want your purse. I have several versions of some, did you just grab your bag? Usually sent in by men of color who talk about the moment when they enter an elevator or walk into a confined space or even down a grocery store aisle, and they notice this sort of imperceptible moment where someone pulls their purse a little bit closer to them. And when someone goes online and reads that, it allows that young man who experiences just, is it the same as being handcuffed or thrown on the hood of a police car? Maybe not. But paper cuts hurt too. And it's a moment that explains that, but it also is a moment that makes someone think, oh my goodness, did I do that this morning when someone walked in the elevator? Wow, when I drive through certain neighborhoods, do I instinctively reach for the lock on the door whether I know anything about that neighborhood or not, just because I'm told that this is supposed to be an unsafe neighborhood. So it's amazing how 6 words can animate people's thinking in a way that even a paragraph or an essay can't.
In Rochester, locally, we've been having race conversations. I would say maybe over the past 3 years, definitely a concerted effort to discuss race and tackle racism. And we've covered it in depth on the program. And what's interesting is that as we've covered, we also hear the stories of struggle. I mean, this work has not been without its hardships. And I'm curious to know, based on the conversations you've heard and your work and your research in this, why is it so difficult for us to talk about this topic?
We could do a whole hour on that. So why is it difficult to talk about? It's difficult to talk about in part because we keep saying it's difficult. I hope that in our generation can perhaps pass on the baton in a different way. Mm-hmm. And instead of saying march forward and go and have this difficult conversation, march forward and go and have this courageous conversation. Change the dialogue around that so that it is not this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's difficult because when you walk through these conversations, you are often navigating a landmine, and you may offend someone. You may say something that's boneheaded. You may speak your truth and then forever be labeled because of that. You may be seen as someone who is intolerant, or forever be seen as the angry black woman, or forever be seen as the white man who doesn't understand his privilege, or there's so many ways that you can be easily categorized just because you had the courage to speak your truth. So keeping people at the table after those difficult moments in the conversation is difficult, and it's difficult precisely because of the moment that we're in. We are an ever more multi-ethnic country, and that creates a sort of shifting of place and shifting of dialogue, and what feels like a triumph for one cohort may be very scary for someone else.
Is there a different purpose or motivating factor in going to college campuses at a time when it seems we're just hearing, the news is asking the question, we read the headlines, is there a race problem in American colleges? Are we having this problem? Is there something that we haven't tapped into yet? And I'm curious, some Rochester area colleges have had race issues over the past few months. It's spread throughout upstate New York. It's everywhere. When you bring it to a college, is there a different purpose behind it?
I don't know if there's a different purpose behind it. I think there's a wonderful opportunity within it, because young people do not have not developed the finely meshed filters that you develop as you get older, as you have to order your steps more carefully in a work environment, because there's so much, am I gonna, boy, if I participate in this conversation, am I going to lose my job? Am I gonna lose my status? Or the weariness. I am just so sick of having to meet once a year on a Tuesday afternoon for diversity training. I mean, please, can we not have this eat your peas exercise again? So there's all these things that are just not present in the same way in a college campus. And also in a college campus, it is for many people maybe the one time, maybe the only time that they will experience diversity in a really broad way. College campuses are diverse in all kinds of ways. And as you get older, you retreat to your comfort zone. And whether it's the religious community that you worship in, or the neighborhood that you live in, or if you're an engineer, you tend to run with engineers, or if you're a baseball fanatic, that's how you order your life. If you live in the States, you might not travel internationally, whereas schools generally have this big international population. So it is an opportunity to have a conversation in a space where the diversity is sort of baked into the experience, and it's a good opportunity to learn a valuable skill in talking across difference.
I was reading a report out of UCLA, a study that found, this was back in 2012, that underrepresented college students at low diversity institutions experience more incidents of stereotyping, discrimination, and harassment on campus. And the study also noted that these incidents, they don't simply disappear in areas where there's high diversity, but they occur at a lower rate. So I would have to imagine that taking this race card project to colleges and universities around the country and here in Rochester not only draws out discussions among students, but also creates an opportunity, as you said, for faculty.
Or just to listen to each other.
Yeah.
Just to listen to each other. I mean, we live at a time right now where communication is very important. I have such an emphasis on communication. I mean, look at me, I have my device, right here. And it's so often based on what you say or how you express yourself. And what gets lost in that is the importance of listening to someone else. Mm-hmm. And again, because people, tend to stay in their lane, you don't always hear someone else's point of view. And I'll give you an example of that. And this has come up time and time again, actually, in several institutions that we've worked with and worked in. We've worked with schools, we've worked with foundations, we've worked with government entities, we've worked with, just small group settings and church basements. And in some cases, you will find out that someone feels marginalized or defined or stereotyped in a way that is surprising. So, on some campuses, if you are very conservative, if you are religiously conservative, if you are politically conservative, you can easily be stereotyped. In a college campus, which is thought to be progressive space, if that's not the flag you wave, it can be a very difficult space to be in and speak your truth and feel like you are not defined or automatically put in some sort of box. And so it's helpful to have a way of understanding that. And to make sure that when you're having conversations about diversity, that term is really expansive, and that it speaks to disability, it speaks to gender, it speaks to what box you check, but also just what path you follow in life.
The Race Card Project, as you mentioned, started really in the wake of President Barack Obama's first election. And a lot has been said in terms of what's been called this resurgence of racism in America after President Obama's election. And many voices have weighed in on this. Tavis Smiley has said, while this can't completely be blamed, obviously, on the president, he said over the last decade, black folk in the era of Obama have lost ground in every major economic category. President Obama himself has said, we've made gains. There has been change, but we're not cured of racism. He said in an interview, societies don't overnight completely erase everything that happened 200 to 300 years ago. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this, in terms of what you've discovered through the Race Card Project and the submissions that people are submitting. You touched upon this at the very beginning. Is the race debate at a new level at this point in time since the election and tenure of President Obama?
Yes, it is. It is, and for lots of reasons and in lots of ways. But we, this notion that it's going to be over, or that it was over, or that will ever be over. I think we just need to dismiss ourselves of that idea. We are a multifaceted nation. Race has been a part of it is in this country's fabric from its very beginning. It is a chasm that is sometimes very apparent, but even when it is not apparent, the history and the reality of race is tied up in the burlap of the stars and stripes of America. It's there. It's always there. So just because you can't hear it, just because you can't see it, just because you can't smell it, does not mean it's there. We're in an interesting period right now, not just because of the election of a man of color, or that a family of color has moved into the White House, but 2008 was a really interesting moment. You had lots of things happening that created sort of a perfect storm for social unrest around race and around class and around financial measures of all kinds. You had, yes, a black family moving into the White House, which forces us as a country to think about hierarchies and to also think about history. And we're going to set that aside because history is a big part of this and something that I don't think we've ever as a country figured out how to really deal with. So let's just set the history aside. Mm-hmm. So you have this historic moment where the fact of race is on the front page of the paper every day. Just, the idea of a man of color living in a space where people of color were not allowed to enter through the front door in many institutions in Washington within my lifetime, and I'm not that old. So, so you've got that, and then you've got economic tumult. You've got this, the economy fell apart. It just completely fell apart. And as we're putting the economy back together, the standard metrics tell us that the American economy is allegedly on solid footing, and it is based on basic economic measures like unemployment, like housing starts. If you visit places where factories were on the wane, the automotive industry is coming back. Talk to an American on Main Street as opposed to Wall Street, and you will not get that narrative. So even though the economy has improved, people just don't necessarily feel it. They're working harder than they ever were. They're working many jobs where perhaps they had one job that had great benefits and prescribed number of hours. Their 401ks feel like 201ks right now. They've had to dip into their savings. Just a decade ago, people were able to, if times were tough, the housing market was strong. You could just take a second on your house and you could get, that's just gone. And people feel like they're not able to pass on as much to their children. So you've got economic tumult coupled with this moment where people are thinking about the American identity in a large way and where they sort of fit into that. And then you've got immigration patterns that are shifting in America. And you've got a moment where America is sort of mid-page, sort of mid-turn in terms of moving from one chapter to another in terms of the racial hierarchy around demographics in the country. So you take all of that, and then you add the disruption around technology and around people being more mobile and around companies being more mobile in a global marketplace, and you take all that together, and it's sort of a perfect storm for social unrest. And we're seeing the results of that in lots of different places. The most visible right now is probably in the political arena. And so when Tavis says that Black Americans have lost ground, I would bet that you could go to a Donald Trump rally and you could find lots of white Americans who feel like they've lost an awful lot of ground, as well, and find people of all stripes who've lost ground, and it colors, no pun intended, their worldview and their place in America, and sometimes their view of race relations in the country. But it's going to be with us, and I think one should probably start with that assumption, and we often don't. We often don't.
Michele Norris is currently growing the Race Card Project website and building content around the submissions she receives from residents around the globe. In addition, she plans to write a book about the project and develop an archive so the submissions have a permanent home. To learn more or submit your own 6-word response, go to theracecardproject.com. As Michele Norris explained in her interview, conversations about race don't have to be difficult. Instead, they can be viewed as courageous. Embracing that type of courageous dialogue seems to be a focus at Nazareth College. The school invited Norris and the Race Card Project to meet with students, faculty, and the Rochester community this month. Joining me now to discuss how the college is utilizing the tools learned from the Race Card Project in the classroom and throughout the campus is Nazareth College President Don Braveman, Assistant Professor of Communication and Media Leah Stacy, and Naz seniors Adora Evans and Chase Farron. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
So we'll jump right in, and I want to ask you, first of all, President Braveman, why was it important for Naz to bring this landmine topic, as Michele Norris describes it, to the campus?
Well, I think one of the most important things we can be doing on a college campus these days is to prepare our students to live and work with people across race lines. The public schools and the schools they're coming from, our high schools, are more segregated than ever. And there's not that opportunity to really engage in dialogue and understanding across race lines. So we, the colleges, need to step in and do that.
We're at a time right now we're hearing about protests regarding issues of race relations on college campuses around the country, including some close to home. And I'm interested in knowing, as students, Adora and Chase, how imperative do you believe fostering conversations about race on campuses at institutions should be?
I guess I'll go first.
Sure.
I think it's vital. It's very important because there's a lot of students who will come to Nazareth College who aren't as open-minded as I would like to think that I am. And it's a little frustrating when you can see that there's a clear difference in intellect and I guess, the thought process when race and that conversation comes about. It's a little disturbing. So I feel as though if people aren't on the same page, they need to get there. It's really important.
Chase?
I think college is the best time to start the conversation. College is all about stepping outside your comfort zone, and that is the only way you're going to grow. You can't stay inside and expect to learn anything new. So getting uncomfortable is the only way you're going to start growing.
And getting uncomfortable, I'm sure, was something that happened in some of your classes, because you talked about this. 3 of your courses actually worked on the Race Card Project. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to know about your approach and how you engage students, and also made this relevant, because we do live in a time when there are people in our society who say we're living in a post-racial society, which is not the case.
No. So Adora and Chase are taking 2 different classes with me. Chase is in editing for publication, and in that course it's really important to me that they not only learn things like AP style and grammar and punctuation, but also how to start important conversations in the newsroom if that's where they end up working. If the editors don't take the responsibility and step up to the plate, who is going to do that? So for that class, that was a discussion that we had. Adora is in my Writing for Digital Media class, where we use a lot of social media. And I love the fact that Michele's project is on the web, but also has that physical manifestation of the cards. So we decided to kind of put our own little twist on it and put it on Twitter. And so I actually sent them out on campus, which is always their favorite thing. And I had them interview a fellow student and do the 6 words. And then we created a storify and collected them all in one place.
Don, I want to ask you about cultural competency. That's
Yes.
something that Michele Norris brought up. She said, more and more, businesses and companies, this is something that they're looking for in employees in this ever more multi-ethnic, multifaceted world. How do we create that on college campuses and institutions when we look at ethnic demographics and racial backgrounds, and we're not seeing that diversity on campuses like we want to?
Yeah, but every survey I've seen of employers highlights the need to hire people who are able to work in diverse settings. And I think the key here is that diversity enriches us, and it shouldn't be seen as threatening. And we see a lot in the national campaign now about how it appears to be threatening. So what we need to do is really systematically approach this on college campuses. And part of it is in courses like the media courses, but also I've just established this semester a campus-wide committee that is going to look at specific strategies for doing exactly that. So our students, when they leave, will be prepared to work and live with people who are different from themselves along racial lines and cultural lines. I think that's critical.
And Chase and Adora, based on the experiences that you've had with the Race Card Project and the coursework, what are some other ways that you would like to see these conversations, I guess, develop, not just on your campus, but on the campuses of your friends as well?
I think recognizing in the first place that there is diversity in trying not to ignore this conversation that's kind of been happening in the background. And actually, as President Braitman said at a town hall meeting at NAS the other day, I don't want to be in a room of 20 students that are 20 other me's. I want that diversity. I'm not going to learn anything if I'm listening to myself talk 7 hours a day.
Yeah, I think it's a little hard because oftentimes, this is my third year at NAS, although I'm a senior, and oftentimes amongst my friends or maybe staff, faculty, I've always wondered, how is it that we can do things other than the Race Card Project or some lecture at the college to have that conversation? Because I guess those things, I'm glad that they're set out there for us to attend, but some students just aren't motivated. And I feel as though the students who aren't motivated to go to these events, we need to reach out to them as well. And it's just hard to do that. So I feel as though just generally having this sort of conversation just looming over the campus, where it's like you constantly know this is something to be had, then that's where the conversations will happen in your dorm, off campus when you're getting coffee or something like that.
And I think it's very important for campuses, for the leadership, to make it clear that this is a key issue for the campus. And I've said this many times, I've written this, I can't imagine anything more important, particularly at a school like Nazareth that values the liberal arts as well as the professional programs, to make sure our students can have cross-cultural, cross-racial competencies. I think it's critical.
Before I let you go, would any of you mind sharing your 6 words?
My 6 words is, why don't I feel comfortable here? And that's pretty much just goes across anywhere that I am. I may feel that way, but my personality doesn't really let anyone else bother me.
Actually, so when I did this originally, I didn't realize the scope that Michele was going for with what is race to you. So originally I had physical characteristics, significance is up to you.
Significance is up to you.
Mine is racial diversity enriches all of us. And I should back up. One of my favorite books about this whole issue is called The Dignity of Difference. And it really emphasizes that we live in a world where all this difference might threaten us or it could enrich us. And I really think we need to figure out how we can understand the enriching aspect.
And as we close?
Mine is inside, we're all the same.
Right. Well, a very special thank you to my guests. I appreciate you joining me. Chase Farron, Adora Evans, Leah Stacy, and Don Braitman. And you can check out the 6-word submissions collected by students from Leah Stacy's digital media class at NAS on our website. Just go to WXXInews.org and click on the Need to Know link. And that's it for this edition of Need to Know on WXXI Television. Thank you for joining us tonight and throughout the weekend and online, and I'll see you next week.